Welcome. My name is Ganji and I am the instructor for this class. The focus of the class is on summary writing and we shall precisely focus on introduction to summary. In this class, it is the expectation that you should know what summary is and you should know the initial tips of how one can summarize a given text. Now, before we go further, we need to know what summary is, and in a concise definition of a summary is a reduced version of an original text, a text that might be that lengthy. When we reduce it into a smaller size. By the fact that we reduce this bigger text into a smaller size and we maintain the original ideas that are said in the text, we are so summarizing. So one can say a summary is a concise overview of the main points of a text. It is like creating a thumbnail. You're creating a thumbnail of a bigger image. You want to reduce it to a smaller size. An image this size, if you want to reduce it to the size of possibly a finger, that reduction is termed as summary. But as we reduce this original text, there is something you should keep in mind. We must keep the original ideas that were said in the original text. Even when the text was that lengthy, we want to reduce it to a smaller size. The original ideas, the themes of the original text should be maintained. And assuming the text you are conversant with, you know of any other ideas other than what was mentioned in the original text, keep aside the ideas that were not mentioned in the original text. So when you're summarizing, you're reducing a bigger text into a smaller length, but you keep the main ideas that were said therein. You don't also add in unnecessary details that were not added in the original text. Here is how one can summarize a given text. Now, before even you summarize a given text, there are some important things you should do. Given the text, you should read the text actively. Before summarizing the text, you should read the text actively, read the passage carefully and actively. As you read, you should keep taking notes. What are the main points in this passage you've read? Which were the main points that were outlined in the text? In addition to the main points, underline the main points so that later on you will refer back to the main point that the original text had given you. And also it is also important that you identify the author's main argument or the purpose of the writing. If I've written a text and I am focusing on girl-child education and there are points I gave out in my text, assuming you are to read this text, you should read in the first place actively, and then you should underline the main points that this original text has given, and then in addition to that, you should find out what is the main idea, what is the main argument that the author is advancing. In addition to the main argument, what purpose does this writing serve? What is intended to be achieved by the kind of writing that the author has presented? Those are important things that you should take note of when you're summarizing a text. It is now from these main ideas that you had underlined in the original text that now you will come up with a shorter version of the original text, which means reading the text actively with the understanding and then taking notes is something important in your understanding of the text. You cannot comprehend a text if you don't read it, and you cannot read a text without jotting down something. As you read, note down some points that the original text says, and I still stress, if there are points outside of the original text, don't bring them in. You use what was given by the initial author, and then now you reduce the number of points therein into what is now termed as a summary, a brief or concise version of an original text. In addition to reading actively, one must as well be in position to distinguish between the main ideas and the supporting details. Authors, when they write, they have main ideas which are termed as themes. But in addition to the main ideas, they would want to explain those main ideas by giving supporting details. So you should, as a writer, be in position to distinguish between the main ideas that the author is advancing, which we call themes, and then supporting ideas that the author also advances in the original text. You should focus on the essential points the author the author wants to convey. Which are the essential points that the author wants to convey in this writing? If you can figure out the essential points that the author wants to convey, it now becomes easy for you in your writing to later on paint a clear picture of the main point the author conveys. In addition to the essential points, you should also not forget the minor details. These essential points were explained or would be explained using some details. Which were those details in the text that the author used to explain the main points? That is something important you should as well keep at the back of your mind so that you can be in position to summarize your text. So you should read actively, and then you should be in position to distinguish between main ideas and supporting details. In addition to this, we also need to consider the prompt. Now, in summary writing, the prompt is the question you're required to answer. Given a passage, at the end of this passage, you will be asked questions. Now, the questions that are asked from the passage is termed as a prompt. If given a specific question or prompt for the summary, ensure that your summary addresses those points that the passage asks you directly. If the passage is asking for advantages of supporting boy child education, when summarizing the text, having read this text, you should be possible to also point for us advantages and advantages alone. If the question says advantages and disadvantages, then you must also answer the prompt accordingly. If the question asks for characteristics of a given, let's say a given animal, for example, some animals have certain features, you should respond to the characteristics that the passage talks about. But I still also need to stress, if there are other things you know that the passage does not talk about, leave those aside. Focus more on responding to the prompt and the prompt alone. What is the question saying? What is the summary? If the summary talks about other things, what question are you required to respond to? Answer the question and the question alone. Because if you would bring in unnecessary details, then those details are not necessary, obviously, and it can actually lead to loss of marks if you bring them in. So, summary, it being concise, which means you should also be in position to express yourself clearly. The text is not your own, it is someone's, but you should also maintain the original ideas of that person. So in your expression of yourself, you should be in position to be clear. We need clarity of expression, but we also need conciseness. You are going to be clear in your writing, but we also need you to be concise, to be brief. Summary is reducing a bigger text into a smaller version, but as you reduce this bigger text into a smaller version, we need you to be clear and we need you to be concise. So express yourself using a language of your own. You read the text which is not yours, but you will express the ideas of that person in your own language, in your own words. You should avoid copying phrases directly from the text. If a text is whatever ideas they are, we'll give a text hereafter. But if the text talks about other points, you are encouraged not to copy phrases from or lines from the passage, original passage, in the names of your summary. Instead of copying lines from the original passage as your answers, you should state the main points that that line you would have copied says. What I said therein, you should now rephrase those in your own words, but you maintain the original ideas of the author, which means you express yourself clearly, you have to use your own words, and then you should avoid copying lines from the original text as you reduce this original text into a smaller version. If you do that, you're more likely to be successful in summarizing the text. But if you're going to copy lines from the original text in the names of your summary, that is not likely. You're not likely to score high marks if it is examinable, and if you're required, maybe your employers need some response and you brought in points that are not necessary, then that is also punishable. Imagine being penalized for something like that. Now, in addition, when you're summarizing, you should be brief. A summary should be significantly shorter than the original text. In other words, you should aim for 20 to 30% of the original length. If the original length contains over 100 words, which means for you to summarize this, in terms of 20 to 30% of the words, you can hit between 20 to 30 words of the reduced version. So you are not going to go into a lot of details that are unnecessary. Don't write that much. If the original text was this much, you don't have to go that much. It should be between 20 to 30% of the original length, depending on the complexity of the passage. But in other cases also, examiners might ask you to write or to summarize the given text in a given word count. If the word count supposedly is 80, don't go more than the stipulated word count. If they say in not more than 100 words, don't write more than 100, because the instruction is quite clear. So you should be brief, given the text. If the text contains 1,000 words and the examiner says in about 250 words to 300 words, summarize the main points of this text, be within that word count. Don't go outside of the stipulated word count. So you should be brief in your summary. Summary is said to be a condensed version of an original text. Condensing means you're reducing. So you should also be brief, be within the word count that the examiner requires you to write in. And then some other important point is, how do you structure your summary? And what kind of flow is expected in your summary? Now, at most, we need a logical flow of your summary. Given the passage, when you read the passage, you need to arrange your points from the first going down to the last points. Which were the first points in the passage? That answers the problem. How about the next points after the first? Which were the last points that the text gives? That is what is required of you in your summary. But if you are going to go in a mixed way, you get points at the back and then others in the middle, you come to the first, and then that is a confused way of writing. It leads to loss of marks. So we need a logical flow of ideas. Organize your summary logically, ensuring a smooth transition between ideas. Assuming there are 2 points, two ideas that you're required to talk about, don't start with the last. If you're counting, you start from 1, you go in that order. So you should also flow in that order in your summary, starting with the first idea that was said, that responds to the prompt, and the last idea that was mentioned by the original author that responds to the prompt. So you should logically arrange your ideas in that order, and also chronology, sequencing is necessary in summarizing your original text, which means start with the first and then go in that order to the last points. That enables a smooth transition of ideas, smooth flow of ideas in the summary. And then in addition to the logical flow, we need also sentence structure. How do you phrase your sentences? In other words, your sentence should vary in structure. Your sentence should vary in structure so that you don't sound monotonous. Don't say it all along. You should be changing, you should be varying. You should introduce in transition markers. Don't just say education all along, assuming the summary is about education. You should use some pronouns, introduce them in. Use other transition markers, use conjunctions to introduce a shift from one idea to the other. So if you're going to just use, if you don't vary in your sentence structure, it is more likely that you will bore the examiner if it is an examination. And if you are to be examined and you bore the examiner in the first place, chances are high what the examiner gives you would be minimal, and none of you would pass with minimal scores. So it is important that you maintain a formal tone, and you should have varying sentence structures. Don't just repeat the same sentences, the same order from the very beginning all along to all the points that you're required to write. Assuming there are 8 points in the passage that you should summarize and you have all of them, don't start all of them in the same sentence structure. There should be variation in your summary. And then in addition to these points of the structure and the flow, we need accuracy and objectivity. We need you to be accurate enough. What do we expect from you? Faithful representation. Ensure your summary accurately reflects the main ideas of the passage without adding your own opinions or interpretation. You might know a lot about a given topic that the writer might not have included your ideas. Leave your ideas outside. We are focusing more on the ideas of the author. Which ideas does the author present to us in the given passage? That enables us, that means that you're accurate enough. But if you're going to bring in ideas that were not said in the original text, that means it is a misnomer, and nobody can actually give you marks when you introduce points that were not said in the original text. In addition to you being faithful in presenting the original ideas, be objective enough. You maintain objectivity. Avoid using subjective language or emotional responses. Focus on presenting the facts and arguments as presented in the text. I still insist, what the text says is what you should summarize. Don't bring in ideas that were not stated in the original text. The moment you introduce points that were not in the original text, it means that you've deviated, and deviation is punishable. First of all, if you're introducing points that were not there, the examiner uses the original passage. Assuming the examiner checks your points and they are not stated in the passage, the question would be, where did you get them? And if you got them from outside, then so should they go. They will also go outside. Nobody will give you the marks for something that wasn't in the original text. So you should be accurate enough, and you should also be objective. Don't be biased. Whatever the ideas were in the passage, if it talks about a topic you don't like, we are not after you liking a given topic. We are after whether you can present the original ideas that this text has. Whether it hurts you or not, that is not the focus of the examiner. The examiner wants to know whether you can present the ideas that are said therein the way they have been, but in a condensed version. So whether it is hurting your opinion, just present them the way they are for the examination's sake. And in addition to your accuracy and objectivity, you encourage, there are a few tips that enables you to write a good and successful summary. Among many, you should identify the transitions. Which transition does the author present? At most, an author would not just go through presenting the same ideas without varying. You should be able to recognize the transition. Pay attention on transition words and phrases in the original text. This can help you understand the relationship between ideas and recreate the flow in your summary. Which means if the author was varying, maybe uses ordinals in presenting the ideas from first to second to the others, or cardinals in presenting the ideas, you should be able to realize that from this presentation of the author, the points were varying from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. And then you too should also note those points that were presented using the transition marker that the examiner or the author had in their initial text. So if you fail to identify the points, you might write lower than the required points. Assuming the passage has 8 points and you only use 4, that means you have not hit the mark. So you should try to dance to the given tune. Identify transitions as one of the tips. In addition to that, you should also be able to paraphrase. You should have paraphrasing power. Given the text, we said you don't copy lines the way they were, but you can restate those ideas, maintaining the main idea said in those lines in your own words. Practice paraphrasing key points from the text in your own words. This demonstrates your comprehension and avoid plagiarism, which means if you're going to copy lines from the text without improving it in your own words, you would have, this is academic theft. And academic theft is termed as plagiarism. You don't copy ideas that are not your own as yours. If it is something else, quote, say the author says this, and then you quote that line that the author, or that you want to use to explain your point. But if you're going to copy the line the way it is without you improving, that is an academic theft, and academic theft is punishable. And in addition to paraphrasing the ideas, you should proofread and revise. After coming up with your initial points, you should check for errors. There might be errors in construction, errors in grammar, error in a number of the rules that are out there that you should follow. The moment you break one, it means that your idea, your summary is actually not going to be up to date. So you should avoid errors. Try to avoid errors as much as you can, and you can avoid errors as much as you can after writing the initial text. Read through and check for the errors. Check it yourself before the examiner points them for you. Read through and see where you've gone wrong and then improve. It could be spelling. If you've written the wrong word, you need to write it the right way. Because if you're going to present your work without revising, it is more likely that when the examiner sees this, then the examiner might punish you because you failed to follow some tips. Now, it is important that you remember a good summary is a valuable skill for academic writing and beyond. By following the guides that are given to help you learn how to write a summary, it now makes it easy for you to respond to the given summary passages that examiners normally ask you in the examination room. Now, there are also key features of a strong summary. In addition to just saying summary, what are the features? What makes a summary? The features enables us to know what makes up a summary. Among many, when you're required to summarize, a feature you should not forget is the prompt. A good summary directly addresses the specific question or prompt provided. What question does the examiner ask you? When you're summarizing, respond to that question and that question alone. The understanding of the question helps you identify which aspects of the text are most relevant and ensures your summary aligns with the examiner's expectation. What does the examiner expect you to respond to? And then which part of the given text should you focus more? But you don't have to just say, I am going to focus on this line and then leave the other paragraphs. No. Read the whole of it more than once and then read the question. Now, when you respond to the prompt, look at the part that the examiner expects you to focus more on. It could be on advantages of a given subtopic. It could be the disadvantages. It could be characteristics or features of other things. If that is what the examiner wants you to focus more, first read the whole text. After reading the whole text, now focus more on what the question says. That enables you to respond to the prompt directly. But if you're going to just beat around, then you just know you're more likely to be penalized. In addition to you focusing on the prompt, another key feature is your comprehension and you writing concisely, briefly. You should first understand the text, and then once you've understood the text, while writing your summary, write it briefly. We said a summary is a condensed or a reduced version of an original text. So read the text, and then once you've understood it, once you've read the text, it is more likely that you might have understood something therein. Now, as you're writing, you should write it in a concise manner, brief. We said if it is a bigger text, reduce it to the specific word count that the examiner expects you. Focus on essential points and avoid unnecessary details. If there are details that are not necessary, keep them out. We need you to focus on the prompt and the points that the original text says about the prompt. Once you're writing them, paraphrase them. That enables you to capture the essence of the given passage. Another key feature is your accuracy and objectivity. I still stress the fact that if the topic is a little biased, don't now express your own bias too. Respond to the text the way it has been. If it addresses a topic that you don't agree, keep your disagreement out. We are not after you disagreeing. We need you to present the information that the text says without adding your own opinion. Present the ideas that the text says without adding your own opinions or your own interpretation. Don't say the author should have said this or no, it is wrong. That is not what you should say. Maintain a neutral tone. Don't take sides. If you're going to take sides, it would mean that now you're biased, and yet we said it should be objective enough. Objectivity means if it talks about a topic you don't agree with, just take it the way the author says. But if you're going to take sides, you will not remain neutral, then it will be wrong. And then you should focus, as you're presenting your ideas, focus more on the facts that the text says. Which facts were presented by the author? Which were they? As the main ideas were given, what facts were stated therein? That should be your area of focus. But if you're going to take sides and then you express your emotional biases, that would mean you fail to be objective enough. We don't need subjectivity. We need objectivity in your presentation. And as you're going to be objective, it becomes easy for the examiner to know that this examinee has not taken sides, has just presented my points from the given text I've given, and the examiner might give you the marks you deserve. But if you're taking sides, it is punishable. and the penalty is severe. And then once you're also answering, you should be person to meet the expectation of the examiner. When given a question, answer the set question. As one of the as you're meeting the examiner's expectation, answer the set question. This is crucial. Don't go off the prompt. Ensure your summary directly addresses the specific question and highlight the key points related to that topic. Once you've read the text, what is the main question saying? What are you supposed to do? While you're answering, respond to what you're supposed to do. If you're going to detour, that is punishable. And a detour actually will lead into loss of marks. So answer the prompt and the prompt alone. Don't bring in ideas that were not stated. Actually, highlight the key points that are related to the topic or that are related to the question, to what the question requires you to do. In addition to answering the question, you should also stay within the text. Don't move outside of the text. If you know a lot, more than even what the author says in a given text, keep your knowledge to yourself. Don't move outside of the text. Be within the given text. The moment you move outside of the text, the question would be, where are these ideas found in the given text? If the examiner won't find them in the text, it would mean you have moved away, you have deviated, and deviation is punishable. So avoid introducing information not presented in the original text. Your summary should be a reflection of the author's ideas, not your own. While you're summarizing, reflect the author's ideas, not your own ideas. And I still stress, if you know more than what has been said, keep your ideas outside. We just need what ideas has the author presented. That is what is required of you. But if you're going to bring in points that are not said by the author, it is punishable. And then you should also follow instructions. In addition to you staying within the text, follow instruction. If the prompt specifies a word limit or a specific aspect of the text to focus on, you should adhere to these guidelines. But if the author says if the text says write in about 60 words, you decide to write in about 30 words, you have failed. If it says write in about 100 words, you write in about 300 words, you have failed. Why? You have not followed instructions. So instructions are also important, and the instruction is based on the question. What word count are you required to focus on? If the word count is, let's suppose, 70 words, write within that specific word count. But if you're going to go more than the 70 words, then know that it is punishable. The examiner might penalize you for failing to be within the specific word count. So another important tip that you should focus more on is don't go beyond the word count that the examiner, or you should follow the instruction. In addition to following the instruction, there are some tips that enables you to have a good summary. Which are they? Before you summarize the text, read it and read it actively. Before summarizing, read the passage carefully. Take notes and underline the key points. This will help you identify. You need to read the text. Additional tips requires you to read the text. Once you've read the passage, the question would be, which are the main ideas that were presented by the author in this text? If you're going to move away, the moment you move away from the ideas that are presented, it is punishable. And there are a number of learners who read it only once. Reading should not only be once. For you to comprehend the text, yes, there are those who are quite quick in their understanding, but you don't only have to read it once. Read it more than once for you to build on your own understanding. In addition to reading actively, you should paraphrase the points. Which were the main points that were said by the author? Paraphrasing means saying the words of the author in your own words. You maintain those ideas that the author seems to be presenting, but you say those words in your own words. Once you paraphrase, this demonstrates your comprehension of the text, and it would therefore mean you have avoided plagiarism, which is academic stealing or claiming authority of some work which is not your own. This text is not yours, it's for even the examiner, it might not be for the examiner. The author's name might be included. So if you're going to copy and claim they're your own words, then that is now when you're going to go wrong. Then you should also create logical flow. Your summary should flow logically, and it should also ensure a smooth transition between ideas. Now, in addition to this, proofreading is also a necessary tip that you should focus more. Now, in the proofreading, there are 4 areas I need you to focus on once you're done writing your text. While you're checking, check for spelling errors. Are there words whose spellings are not that clear or wrongly written? If you're revising, focus more on the spelling. How about the punctuation? Which marks of punctuation have you used? Have you used the marks well? Did you place your question mark where it should have been? How about the exclamations, assuming there is an exclamation in the text? Let's suppose the quotation is said in the text. Did you use the inverted commas for affirming that this idea is not your own? Are there semicolons that you have to use? Have you used them well? Are there commas? All the marks of punctuation should be well used in the appropriate position. If you're going to write without focusing in your reading, if you're not focusing on this, it would mean you've gone wrong. And then on formatting, what sentence structure have you come up with? Is your sentence structure varying? Are you flowing the same? You should be checking for those, because if such is not reflected, it would mean you failed. Still, in addition to the formatting, have you used transition markers in your writing? If you have not, it would mean that it's just like water that flows, maybe like the river. The river flows. If there's no bridge or dam that stops it, it is more likely that it just goes non-stop. So you should, in your formatting, focus on whether there are transition markers that you use to show a symptom of ideas. But if it just goes one way, it is not that good. And then the last tip in your proofreading and your revision is accuracy. How accurate are the points that you presented in response to the question you asked? You need to present the right points that respond to the right question the examiner had asked. Given the prompt, while you're presenting your point, the points should be the right ones. And I still stress the fact that don't bring in ideas that the original text does not present. The moment you bring those ideas, it is a detour, and the detour is punishable. So we need ideas that are relevant to the question or the prompt that you asked to do. And then lastly, it is important that you remember a summary is a well-crafted summary demonstrates your ability to analyze. Okay? For you to summarize, you should be in position to analyze the text. You should identify the key points, and then you should communicate those points effectively. If you can analyze the text, identify the key points, and then effectively communicate those points, it will therefore mean that you can be in position to summarize the text. By focusing on these features and tailoring your summary to a specific question, you can impress the examiner and excel in your summary writing text. In addition, if you fail to analyze and then to identify the key points and then effectively communicate those points, how then can you impress the examiner? Because you're going to be given a number of texts which examines your ability, whether you can summarize the text or not. And if you can, it would now mean that you are going to be successful, you would meet the expectation of the examiner. And you will also excel in your summary examination. But if you cannot, it would therefore mean that you're going to continuously lose the marks of summary writing once you meet this question in the examination. And that means your chances of success in the language would be minimum. So my encouragement is, with this guide, this introduction to summary, given a text and given these tips, when you use them, it becomes very easy for you to be successful, and you can excel in your summary writing comprehensions. This is where my class for summary will end. Thanks.